Okay, thank you, Ibs. So what we'll do now is show the video from Professor Vikström, who's actually based at the University of Cambridge, so he's pretty local to us, and hopefully would have been there if we'd been in Hammersmith and Fulham, but never mind. And after that, it would be really helpful if Ib and Jakob, you could just say a few minutes about what the project is, just a few headlines, and why you decided to develop this based on Hella's book, but just a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. If you could show the video now.
Hella has asked me to give you a brief introduction to SAT, Situational Action Theory, on about 10 minutes, which obviously only permit me to give you some flavors of the basic argument. I've started to illustrate in this first slide with a smorgasbord because I think that reflects this the knowledge situation in criminology and crime prevention. We have a lot of insights and we have a lot of research findings, but they are fragmented and poorly integrated. The situation when it comes to crime prevention and policy is well summarized by Peter Greenwood, who says that current prevention theory in practice reflects the vigorous but undisciplined marketplace of competing ideas, often without sound foundations in either theory or research. And the obvious remedy suggested by Professor John Laub is that to enhance policy and practice, we not only need this myriad of various research, but we also need strong theory that can organize the findings and help policy and practice to focus on what are the really key important differences. Because research has demonstrated hundreds of different psychological, biological, social factors and so on that have more or less strongly correlated to people's crime involvement. But I would argue that most of them are actually irrelevant when it comes to the question of what causes people to do crime. In brief, the core arguments of SAT are the following: that people commit crimes. We commit crimes because we see it as an acceptable action alternative in the circumstance, and there are no relevant and strong deterrent. Most people obviously do not see most crimes as acceptable alternative in most situations, but some people do. So that's one major reason why people commit crime. Some people care more about following certain rules, others disagree with them, etc. But another reason, which might be particularly important when it comes to young people, is also the failure to adhere to one's own morality, which we refer to as failure to exercise self-control when we are externally pressurized to act otherwise. If one accepts that, the central question then obviously become why people, and why some much more than others, come to see crime or specific crime or crimes as acceptable action alternatives, or why they become more vulnerable to external pressure to commit acts or crimes. If we can answer these questions, we have grounds then for developing effective policy and prevention that can focus on helping people not to see crime or specific kinds of crimes as action alternatives, and also help people to better resist external pressure to engage in acts of crimes. In fact, I would argue that when you think about prevention and policy measures, only those measures that reasonably can be seen to affect how people see their action alternatives, if they see crime as an action alternative, or help people to better resist external pressure, is measures that actually could have some effect. So, according to SAT, there are really only two important personal characteristics that affect people's variation in their crime propensity, and that is their personal morality, uh, how what people think is right or wrong, how strongly they feel, and perhaps most importantly, how much they care about following various laws, and their ability to exercise self-control, how well they can act in accordance with their personal morality when they are external pressure. These are the two individual factors that, according to SAT, will determine their crime propensity. When it comes to environments, it's the moral context of opportunities and frictions. Um, so the moral context, the moral norms, how well they are informed, that relates to specific opportunities. For instance, to, let's say, smoke cannabis when it's illegal, or when it comes to fighting, or the context promoting or de-promoting, so to speak, fighting. So the moral context of the setting is important. But the key point here is the coming together of the two, because that is what creates motivation and the differences in people's action alternatives. Some people in some moral contexts will see crime as an alternative, others will not, and that will determine the outcome. But this is the kind of basic process one should try to influence. So the basic simple argument then is that if you change the input, you will change the behavior. That is, if we can change people's uh, uh, morality and ability to self-control, so they become less likely to see and choose crime as an option, and we can change environments, moral context, so they become less likely to induce crime, then we will have an effect on behavior. So the suggestion is that we should focus on these various aspects. Um, and that can be summarized like in the following way. To change people's criminal behavior, we can change people, as I said, and we do that by reducing the crime propensity. And reducing the crime propensities then is to affect their low relevant personal morality and ability to exercise self-control, and that we can do through influencing processes of moral education and cognitive nurturing, which I don't have time to talk about, but they are the important processes. For instance, parents and teachers are, when it comes to young people, central when it comes to these processes. We can change the environments, reduce the criminogenic incitements, study how context, the moral content of context, how that may contribute or not to crime, the occurrence of crime. And the third way is that we can try to influence people's exposure to environments, particularly people who already have developed some crime prudeness, and that we can do what we talk about as processes of social and self-selection, which I don't have time to go into. But I can give you one example of self-selection processes to actually influence people's self-selection. In a study by Tony Bottoms on persistence, he found that persistent criminals who wanted to stop often try to avoid places, environments, and people that could cause them into trouble. So that was SAT in a so to speak turbo format, and I recommend that if you're interested, read more about the arguments. But I like to end with these graphs because if you think about how people's acceptance of various behavior has changed over time, we can learn much about how to influence crime in general. Smoking is a prime example. We have here an advert from the 50s where it says more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. And then the other picture is taken outside Addenbrooke's hospitals in Cambridge, which say we are proud to be a non-smoking site. You cannot smoke anywhere. So the question is, what is the process? Why has it gone from being very acceptable to unacceptable? And I listed a few other um, um, things that have had developments. Cannabis use has gone a bit in the other way, and so on. But it may be useful as an end to try to reflect why we have these major changes in behaviors acceptability.
Okay, thank you. That was fascinating. Um, and thank you to Professor Wikström for sending us that video. Just a shame we haven't actually been able to meet him in the flesh, but there you are. So I'm moving on to you now, Ib, to talk about how you use those theories to develop this very exciting, very interesting primary family collaboration project. So over to you, Ib.
Yeah, I'm going to talk very shortly about the starting of the project, and I have these 5 elements I want to speak about: the need for the project, how we found the partners, some of the fundamentals, some of the basic things we are focusing on, how the project evolved, and the result of the project. Next, please. So as Wikström noticed, there are things that could or should be changed. For instance, morality and other basic things. And looking at that, we thought that there was a need for us to find ways of involving parents even more in the education from the primary school, and also there was a need that the professionals around the children, they worked and cooperated much better than they do in order to not just to prevent criminality, but also to lead to the children to have a better life also as adults. So we aim at supporting and making cooperation among partners between parents, teachers, and educational staff by developing new methods for collaboration. And for that, we thought that we could make a project funded by the Erasmus Plus project, and for that also we need to find partners that could lead to a successful project, and we selected very carefully partners and succeeded in finding partners that were representing municipality as LBHF, and we involved university, the University of Sarkova, and we involved family council organization, local organization. And inspired what we heard from Wikström, we wanted to work with what we call the 4 fundamentals.
Can I interrupt shortly, Ib? You forgot actually to mention ourselves. So from Vejle, we are a SSP, which I can't translate in English, but they're working with young people and try to prevent them from coming into crime. And then there's, of course, VFIN, which stands for Resource Center of Integration.
Yeah, SSP is a cooperation between school, social administration, and police. And Helle Bryner, who was, as I introduced, together with Wikström, is the manager of this organization in Vejle. Yeah. Sorry for forgetting ourselves. Thank you, Jakob. The 4 fundamentals is one of the basic things is morality. And morality is about making choices and acting according to what we believe is right. So that's the work on that. And another very, very important thing is to learn people to have self-control, to restrain the impulses and thoughts, emotions and desires. And we, as you can see later on, we in other presentations, we have ways of working with that. Relationship is also very important to have focus on what kind of relations the young people have to other people, to parents, to family, and to friends. Environment, we envision very broad. We do not only look at the physical environment, but also on the social environment. So working with young people and children, we are looking at these 4 fundamentals and trying to find ways of dealing with them. The project started about, of course, we started preparing the project and together with partners, and when we had the funding, the project itself was an interview with teachers and parents to involve them and also to find new perspectives of what we have been thinking. Then we tested various elements that, and you will hear that in the later presentations. We had a teacher training in Spain for around 25 to 30 teachers from the 5 partners. And we developed a platform and a handbook also during the project. Yes, final one. So the result of the project, we have an online platform where you can communicate and see some of the things we have developed. We have a handbook with some suggestions and ways to work with this. And we have studies of all these interviews that we practiced in the project. And we had a lot of mutual inspiration to work with parents and children during the project.